Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, cool. So, as you guys know, we're not really currently playing any type of chess right now. They have the world champion, so they have the candidates tournament coming back up. They have another installment of the Champions Chess Tour coming up in the middle of March. But we are on a low point. But I remember back in the day, I got my boy Reginald. Let me see. Meganang Umaga Kaibagan. Kamusta. Maraming salamat po for coming by checking out my video. But yeah, he wanted he was asking about like maybe possibly like a Vladimir Kramnik versus Peter Leko. So I went ahead and grabbed a little Kramnik and Peter Leko game. And this is taken from round 8 of their 2004 World Championship match. So if you guys are ready, let me see. Don't think I have any Hungarian. Do I have any Hungarian over here? Maybe I don't. I'm not sure if I do. Maybe I might. Nope. No Hungarian. So I can't say anything in Hungarian. So I'm going to have to put that on my to-do list. But if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and take a look, see what we have for this game. All right, so we got E4. Get this volume hooked up. Bam. All right, so we got E5, knight to F3. We got knight to C6, bishop to B5. We have A6 and we have bishop to A4. So we have the Lopez Morphy variation. As you guys know, of course, when A6 is played, you're usually either going to see bishop takes C6 and then, pawn would take D6, or you're going to be seeing bishop back here. I mean, sometimes in much lesser, you'll see the bishop retreat to, maybe one of these squares or something like that. But it's kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't really do much for your position as white. So you hold on to your advantage with these moves here. Bishop takes and then bishop back to A4. So we see knight to F6. We see castles by white. We have bishop to E7. Now, of course, as you guys know, this is similar to the Berlins. So if you do take the pawn here, it'll be slightly different, but you'll still have a pretty good position as white. So you see D4. The pawn would take in this particular situation. And then we would see queen to E2, queen to E7, rook to E1, knight would come to C5. We'd see queen to D1, knight coming back to E6, covering the queen. We see C3, trying to make sure that we have a little bit of luft for our bishop. B5 would come, bishop to B3. We'd see D3. There really isn't a way to hold on to that pawn anymore. And so we would see bishop to G5. And this is, of course, just a sample variation of what you might see. It's not, you don't have to play this way. You could have also taken here as well, but it would just kind of help your development as white. So you would be down 2 entire pawns. But as you can see, the king's position is really horrible and it's really stuck in the middle of the board. So you definitely have some compensation for that. So like I said, we did have bishop to E7. After rook came to E1, we saw B5, bishop coming to B3. We see castles by black. We see C3, pawn to D5. We see pawn takes D5, knight takes D5. We see knight takes E5, knight takes E5, and we have rook takes E5. And as you can see, white has, actually won an entire pawn. Now, the thing about it is the position is still fairly equal. So even though you see that, you have this extra pawn for white, you have a lot of ability for some activity for black. So as you'll see in the following moves, black definitely puts a lot of pressure on white. And something you have to notice as far as white is concerned is the fact that they have all these pieces, kind of hanging out on their back, on their home squares, and they haven't moved them. And so, black is much closer to attacking white than black is. So, like I said, even though you're down that pawn, you're not, kind of down and out. So we see C6, we see D4. Most logical move, you're trying to develop, get these, not that way. You're trying to get these pieces developed some kind of way. So we see bishop to D6, and we have a rook back to E1. So queen comes to H4. And as you can see, like what I was talking about earlier, you have a lot of pressure on the king side. This knight has the ability to come over. This bishop can come over and stuff like that. So you have to be really careful in what you're weakening on your king side, because your king is kind of all by itself chilling. So you don't want to put him into any bad spots. So of course we have to play G3 because there really isn't any other way to prevent checkmate on H1. And the rook swinging over, queen coming down, stuff like that. So we see queen to H3. And so as you can see, I mean, black is kind of close. Once they can maybe get the bishop here, push pawn here, you know, they have a lot of dangerous, you know, checkmate possibilities coming down on the king here. So we're trying to block that with rook to e4. Also, we're trying to swing this rook over, you know, to this square here, because that's gonna definitely kick the queen away and allow you to start getting some developing going on. So we see g5, and as you can see, g5 does kind of open the king up, but it does perfectly prevent this, you know, this square. And, you know, sometimes when you're playing, you know, you have to play, you know, defensive chess as well. You can't just always think about, you know, doing your own attack and stuff like that. So we see queen to f1. You know, Kramnik really wants the queen out of h3. And so now we see the queen come back to h5. We see knight to d2. We see bishop to f5. And then we see f3. And so that's really interesting. So, like, if you want to go ahead real quick and stop the video and see what black plays in this position here, something looks kind of juicy in the position. So like I said, if you want to go ahead and stop it and see what black plays here in response to f3, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So it's very interesting because I think a lot of people, and I mean, initially when I first saw the game, I was kind of thinking, man, like, why would you just leave your rook right there? I didn't really calculate too far. I kind of calculated like maybe a move or two. So I kind of, you know, I don't think I would have left my rook there, but the whole point of playing f3 was to basically go into this variation that I'm going to show you in a second. The move that was actually played in the game is knight to f6. It might look a little curious, like I said, because it just kind of looks like you can just win the exchange with bishop takes. But that was actually kind of a trap that Kramnik was actually setting for Leko. And Leko, you know, he intelligently sidestepped that, backed his knight up. But if we do go into that variation where bishop takes e4, you're going to be running into a lot of problems because, yes, you are winning the exchange, but you are going to get a lot of tempo gains on your position, and your king is a little bit exposed. So we would see pawn takes e4, and we would most likely see something like rook, knight to e7 or knight to c7. And so if we did have the, you know, of course, some of you guys might have been wondering what happens here. The knight is just trapped pretty much. It's not feeling very good. So we would be probably backing the knight up to e7. And then after, let's do here. Yeah, knight to e7. And then after e5, you'd be backing the bishop up. And then you see knight to e4. And as you can see, the problems that white had are almost gone. I mean, you have the knight about to come into f6, basically like with no contesting. You know, that's a problem because you are forking the king and the queen. You know, there just really isn't a lot of coordination. You're going to be dropping this pawn. You know, this pawn is pinned because of this bishop. So you would probably have to play something like this. But, you know, you still, I mean, of course you can't play that because of the fork. So that's the most pressing issue that you have to worry about. So you're going to be having to move the queen somewhere. So, you know, maybe something like that, you know, then the knight would take. But you just have a lot of pressure drawing some squares. So you have a lot of pressure on this exact pawn. So that's not really something that you want to go into. So yeah, you can think about winning the exchange, but you have to think about, if you are going to be winning an exchange, is it free or are you giving up too much to win the exchange? So going back to what we had in the game, like I said, we did have knight to f6. And then we saw knight to rook to e1. And this is actually the novelty of the game. This is the first time as of 2004 that this move was actually played. So we see rook a to e8. And then rook takes e8, rook takes e8. And something that was actually probably a little bit better in this position was just leaving the rook there. Like we said before, you're not really losing the exchange and just going simply a4 immediately. Because the problem is, once you get into the position that we see right here, you know, you have a lot of issues because this knight doesn't really have like the greatest like possibilities. This bishop is in there, hemmed in, this rook is hemmed in. So as you can see, you know, black has a very dominant position in this situation. So we have to try to liberate our pieces some kind of way. So we see a4, and then we see queen to g6. And so we see pawn takes b5, and then we see bishop to d3, a nice little Zwischenzug move, because now the queen has to figure out where are you going to go. Also, because of the undevelopment that white has, you have to worry about the rook coming and penetrating onto e1. So you don't really have a lot of options when it comes to the queen. So you're going to have to play queen to f2. But if we just back up to what we had before, queen to g6, it was actually suggested that knight to e4 come in. Because if you did have knight taking e4, you'd have the pawn taking e4. And then after the bishop took e4, you'd actually be able to take the pawn here on g5 because you do have a lot of threats on this f7 square. And so, you know, of course, the king can't just go taking that because you're just going to be winning the rook outright. So you definitely don't want to do that. So going back to, like I said, we had in the game, we had queen to f2, and then we see rook to e2. And as you can see, the queen really doesn't have anywhere to go. You know, of course, the only move really is here, but you're going to be taking this here while defending this bishop that's attacking the queen. So you just, I mean, you don't even really have the ability to take back. If you do, you're going to be looking at this right here, which probably isn't the end of the world, but it's not really where you want to be. So we do see queen taking e2. Like I said, there really wasn't much better to do in this position. So after bishop takes e2, pawn takes a6, we have queen to d3, we have king to f2. The bishop takes on f3. We have the knight taking on f3. We have knight to e4 with check. We have the king down to e1. And as you can kind of see, like white's position is really starting to fall apart. You know, their pieces are hanging. So after knight takes c3, we see pawn takes c3. And, you know, we have this pawn hanging. We have this knight hanging. You know, we just really just kind of have too many pieces hanging. So, of course, you know, Leko's going to go ahead and go for that rook in the corner because that is white's strongest piece. So we have to eliminate that. So after queen takes c3, the king goes to f2. We see the queen taking a1. And Leko doesn't even allow Kramnik like any opportunities whatsoever. He plays after a7. He doesn't even take the pawn. He just plays h6. And I'm like, man, that's kind of rude. You're just going to basically just completely shut down all of his chances ever. And then after h4, we see g4. And as you can see, you know, it's just not really, there's really nothing that you can do. I mean, there's no really place that you can really move the knight. You can do that. I mean, you know, there's really nothing to do. I mean, you can't do this. I mean, you're going to be, well, of course, I mean, you're just going to grab the pawn. But you're just pieces. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can just do this. Like, so it's just, there's a lot of turmoil that's going on for white here. So you definitely don't want that. This is not a position that you can really defend as white. So that is that game, guys. Like I said, that is from 2004. That is from round 8 of their world championship match. And if you guys notice, the picture that I actually got, that is the actual game itself. And if you guys can see, if we go back, if you guys can actually like look good enough, if you want to go back and look at the thumbnail, that is the actual position that they ended up in. So like I said, that was pretty interesting for me to be able to find. It's not a high quality picture, but it was kind of nice to actually find the picture from that actual game, because that's always kind of something special you can do. Let me see here. Let me just do this real quick. Let me just add the image of them. Browse real quick so I can put that on the screen for you guys. Let's see, chess players, Kramnik, Leko. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch this picture out here. So you guys should be seeing that here. And that is, I'm going to just cover me up a little bit. But like I said, this position right here is the actual position from the game that they played. The one that I just got done showing. So let's go ahead and hide that real quick. Bam. So everything is back to normal. Bam. All right, cool. But I appreciate you guys coming by. And I thank you guys. You know, Maraming Salamat, King Magai Kaibagan. I'll say Messiah Akong Makita King Muli. I got a little bit faster with that. I had to think for a second, but I appreciate you guys very much for coming and stopping by. Mabu Hai. Pa alam to you. And anybody that came from Hungary, I will make sure I'm writing it down right now. I will make sure that I learn some Hungarian. So that way I'll have some words for you guys next time. If I do any like Judith Polgar or the Polgar sisters or any more Peter Leko, I'll have a little bit for you. But I appreciate you guys coming through. And if you guys have any other videos that you'd like for me to do, feel free to let me know. And I'll see you guys next time. All right.